más de 300 millones de hectáreas tratadas en más de 14 países. Spraytec Fertilizantes. Tecnología líder, producida en la provincia de Santa Fe. Spraytec Fertilizantes. Una vez, siempre.
Somos REM, la red de manejo de plagas de APRESID. Nos encargamos de reunir a productores, expertos y empresas para generar información y promover el manejo integrado de malezas, insectos y enfermedades. También difundimos la actualidad del manejo de plagas a través de diferentes herramientas como jornadas técnicas, alertas de resistencias, notas y también el mapeo de tanto malezas, insectos o enfermedades.
Good afternoon. As it has been said, we will talk about weed resistance, past, present and future. I will talk about 10-year period of the REM, which is the Pest Management Network. I will talk about this network and the maps that we have created. I'd like to start with the introduction of the Pest Management Network, which back in 2010 was named differently, Weed Resistance Management Program. It was created to tackle this problem, and the goal, both at the beginning and today's goal, is to articulate all the stakeholders related to this topic. APRESID is the coordinator of this network, and we are related with some companies, some experts, some of those are here today, and the entities where they perform. This network was created to track resistant biotypes of weeds, and we started designing the curves of those found in our country. Back in 2010, the curve was similar to today's. There were just a few resistant weeds and a few modes of actions. This is the curve we have created with 45 biotypes. Different colors relate to the different modes of actions. As you can see, we have introduced a new color, which means that complexity is increasing all the time. Apart from keeping track of all the resistant weeds, we also quantified and created a profile of these types. We created the maps for this end. The one was created in 2013, 10 years ago. We measured for this map the different problematic biotypes of weeds, both tolerant and resistant. Maps are designed by means of telephone communications, where we ask about the presence of the problematic weeds at the level of the city or town or department, and in some cases, for some specific weeds, we check abundance, which is the surface that this weed affect 2013, 2015, 2017, 2019, 2021, and 2023. Every 2 years, the last survey was done a bit in advance so that we could present the information today. We mapped 31 weeds and the percentage of the superficial coverage of 9 of those weeds. That enabled us to map, since 2013, Amaranthus or hairy fleabane and Papaforum from that date to today. And today, this is what we can see. You can see the comparison between the 10 years, Amaranthus and Papaforum. These are the overall results for these years, for the 2023 mapping. You can check this on the websites, and the specialists, the experts who are here today, will delve into each of the weeds. Here I'm showing the weeds with the highest geographical presence, the top 10 of the weeds that we have mapped. Conisa, glyphosate resistant Conisa, Amaranthus, also resistant to glyphosate, leucine, echinocloa, sorghum, and these are the ones with tolerance: Comelina, chloris, ALS-resistant Conisa with a high level of presence. This is not tolerant nor resistant to glyphosate, lolium, and papaforum or turnip. This is how the presence has increased in each geographical area year after year. We can see that the curve goes up year after year of each of the problematic weeds, of the challenging weeds. We are showing here the increase, the level of those which have increased the most since 2021-23. We are showing the departments where the weed is present today, this year, and those in which these were not present back in 2021. The three first items are recent resistant biotypes for these years, so there's nothing to compare them against when it is shown in red if there's resistance. But if it is suspicious, there are monitoring failures, recurrent monitoring failures. It means that there's a suspicion of resistance. That's in yellow. You can see the weeds with the highest levels of increase and how they increased, as resistant or under suspicions. Conisa is also shown here, ALS-resistant Conisa, with one of the highest levels, and you can see also with the highest red bar. It goes beyond the medium value. This is the superficial percentage shown here. Clearly, Amaranthus and glyphosate-resistant Conisa are the leading weeds. They are present in every geographical area, present in almost 100% of the surface. The mapping area was about 29 million, and the others are a bit at a lower level, and you can see the different colors showing how they increased year after year. This slide shows the presence of all the challenging weeds of the biotypes mapped since 10 years ago up to today, and you can see their geographical distribution in departments. The problem is going up, and today we created this panel so as to hear the experts' opinion on how they what do they think about the REM, how it has evolved, and what they can say about this problem. Thank you. Good afternoon. While my slides are being shown, I would like to thank Eugenia, the network, the REM, R-E-M, Martin. We have worked together for several years, and I would like to thank APRESID for the invitation. It's an honor for me to be here with these colleagues. I'm talking about all the resistant biotypes in the province of Buenos Aires. I'm not the single author. I have collaborators, many people in the province of Buenos Aires, from INTA, like Mario Viña, Ricardo López in the past, Ramón Chigón, Marco Giannicari, people from the University of the South, the Center South Universities. I don't want to name all of them, but they are co-authors of some of the papers or knowledge that I'm sharing today with you on this topic. There are several weeds present in the different regions, but we were asked on the most challenging ones for the province of Buenos Aires. We should mention ryegrass, lolium, There are two different species under this name, Lolium multiforum and Lolium perennial. Both are naturalized and they are weeds. They behave like weeds. The annual raygrass or Lolium multiflorum is the most challenging one because how it affects crops, and it has also the highest resistant rates. I will focus on this weed. The main problem related to the Lolium multiflorum can be seen on this flow chart. Raygrass in blue is associated to the black oat or Avena fatua in our soil. There are two peaks of germination, summer and autumn. However, we can also see new growth during the winter growth, so there have been some resistant cases, herbicide resistant cases during the whole period for barley and wheat. In the fallow that grows before the summer crop, there have been some cases seen also, and the gramicides are not useful, not effective there. Back in 2007, I started my master degree focused on glyphosate resistant. 2005-2006, the first resistant populations were found in the southeast of the province of Buenos Aires, in Dorrego particularly. Mario Viña started studying this subtype with other colleagues, and then they transferred the research to me so that I could study the resistance mechanism. Mainly back in those days, we saw resistance to glyphosate with some rates around 3 to 5. That was the median rates indexes. And when we observed the potential mechanisms, we decided to study the ACPC enzyme, which focuses on the mutations that were seen back in those days and were considered responsible. But we found there were no mutations. Some years later, Microshanikari continued with this research, and when multiple resistance was observed, along with Matias Flores, they found that this glyphosate resistance was mediated by detoxifiers like the P450 enzyme. Some years later, after these first cases were found, some other glyphosate resistance weeds were found, and in the short term, multiple resistance weeds were found. Another herbicides failed. You can see here a control trial. 12 populations were studied, dry weight, different treatments were applied. The control group was glyphosate. The 3 treatments were applied post-emergence of the winter crop, and 2 of the most frequently used gram herbicides mixed with glyphosate. In general, we saw variability, something which is typical for these populations. We can't say there's a unique profile. Sometimes with the wire tending and the history of herbicides, we can see there are variations in those profiles. In general terms, we can see that the one with the lowest average among all populations is glyphosate. We also see in this group the related to the post-emergence crops. You can see a great range of variability. There are some populations where herbicides work well, but in some others there are escapes, leaks, and there are resistant weeds. control is a bit higher than what we have seen with glyphosate. In the combination of 3 herbicides, the average is a bit better. However, there's still some variability indicating that there's resistance in fields. The graminicides are quite effective. They have good values, and the reductions in dry wet is attained, but there is some variability. So it tells us that there's a gene or something that can be selected for developing new treatments. Different trials were done in the province of Buenos Aires, screening trials with different herbicides. This is one particular trial carried out by Viña et al. 2016, 13 locations, 70 to 100 populations, and the same method was applied in 2018, 6 locations, 60 populations. I'm showing here the survival rates under the different treatments. The same products were applied as the one that I mentioned. Glyphosate and the pinoxidine, haloxyfob, and clethodim, and the mixture of the 3 of them. Considering the survival rates, we can say that certain scores can evaluate the resistance level. If there is more than 10% of survival, you can say there's resistance. 1 to 20% of survival, resistance is being developed, and 0% means that those are sensitive populations. This is not the method to determine resistance. For screening purposes, this is useful. In the southeast, back in 2016, we can see that among the 70 populations tested with glyphosate, around 70% had resistance, were resistant to this. In ALS inhibitors, 30%. For graminicides, there was a great variability depending on the group. It was Lenfo or the other products used. The same outcomes were observed for the southeast of the province of Buenos Aires. We use glyphosate, pinoxidine, and the triple combinations. This trial was performed in 2018 and 19. A couple of years later, we can see higher levels for glyphosate, for example, 96%. Of resistance, pinoxidine, 66%, and a bit lower for those treated with the triple treatment.
Bueno, un poco la historia.
What do we see on the maps, on REM's map? These populations began to appear in 2005, 2006 in the southeast, but by 2008 they had expanded, so right now. So when we started mapping the resistance cases of lolium, we saw there was a wide surface area affected by these biotypes. As time went by, we realized that the area began to grow towards the north, above the province of Buenos Aires, south of Santa Fe, and Entre Rios provinces. When in the resistance cases, we can see this is another pathogen. You can see the surface in the south and southeast, and as time went by, the surface grew, not as much as the resistance to glyphosate. In the case of ALS, it's the same. We had some isolated cases, and as time went by, the distribution grew, especially in the southeast and southwest of Buenos Aires province. And here, according to the results of the REM work, this is what we see in the field, though there is an increase in resistance to glyphosate cases between 2013 and nowadays. We can see that the slope of the curve is not as steep In the case of weed killers, there is an increase here, but it's sort of plateauing, and the same happens with ALS. It looks like there is an increase, and we see the same in the case of ryegrass. We are getting more used to working with it. We know more about this. We don't have as much knowledge about crucifers. Among crucifers, I'm going to talk about Brassica rapa, one of the most problematic weeds. Just to see what crops are more affected or impacted, this is the emergence curve. There is a peak during autumn, another one during the spring, but a typical feature of this weed is that there is a baseline level at the very beginning. We will always see new weeds growing, new plants growing, so this will be an issue. Though historically it has been a problem with winter crops, it's also a problem with fallow and summer crops. I'm going to talk about Brassica rapa, but I'm also going to talk about Raphanus sativus. There is resistance to ALS, Rapistrum rugosum. Just like Phelium cama, they were rare species, and they are increasingly more present. In the case of Hirschfelia, we have case of resistance in the southeast, and in the north, Rapistrum is becoming a problem too, so beware of it. The history of resistance in Brassica rapa, there is something clear here. The first resistance was the resistance to glyphosate, with resistance rates that were quite high, and this is telling us that it's an active site resistance, a specific one, and it was first studied by the people of Universidad Nacional del Sur in Balcarce, and what they found, where there was a high resistance rate, when they analyzed the enzyme, they found that it had the resistance transgene that had been introduced into colza in Canada, and this gene had never been accepted in Argentina, but it came to Argentina anyway, and now we have resistance with very high rates of resistance to glyphosate, and it's quite spread out. We have analyzed many biotypes, and we have this resistance transgene present in most of them. Besides, in very few years, we started finding this before 2015, and later on the people of Universidad Nacional del Centro, Victor Juan especially, began to find cases of multiple resistance in the south, and they found resistance to ALS, glyphosate, and 2,4-D. This is the most complex scenario we may find nowadays, and although the core was in the area of Azul, this is part of a dissertation being written by Marcelo Esteban, and we took some samples from the core area where we had glyphosate resistance, and we moved towards the area of the southeast. What we see in this case is that it is spreading quickly, well, the cases of resistance, especially to 2,4-D and ALS. This is a similar paper. This is survival to different herbicide treatments, 2,4-D, glyphosate, and metsulfuron, though different survival rates are used as compared to the previous paper. When we talk about survival, we're talking about low resistance, medium resistance, high or very high one. In the southeast, the central section, and another area in the province of Buenos Aires, in the case of 2,4-D, there was less than 40% with high resistance. If we go to the central area, we see that the resistance is there. If we move towards Tandil and Balcarce, the resistance drops. In the case of glyphosate, 77% of the populations had high resistance rates. So when the population was treated, over 50% survived. And it was even higher in the case of ALS. 90% of the populations were resistant, had high resistance rates. When we look at the distribution in the territory, this is resistance to glyphosate in 2015 when it first cropped up and how quickly it spread out. This is the current scenario in the province of Buenos Aires. Regarding ALS, resistance is in the southeast, but in very few years it moved throughout the province and also to the south of Santa Fe and part of Entre Rios, and the resistance to 2,4-D, though the territory is quite wide, maybe in these cases the whole county is colored, but I believe this resistance is not as widespread as the resistance to glyphosate. Eugenia has already shared this. These are the surface areas affected by different kinds of weeds in Argentina. In the province of Buenos Aires, there are several kinds of weeds, and in Buenos Aires province would be the blue part. We have several cases of resistance. The two worst problems are these ones, but we are much better off than what my colleagues are going to share with you. We have high crop rotation in Buenos Aires. We have many mixed farms, and this improves or helps us in managing resistance. And when I was preparing this presentation, I began to think about the path. I want to talk about the outlook, and not only about the history and about the track record. But looking at the track record, I looked at papers published by different groups, and we have learned quite a bit starting in 2005, 2007, when we had the first resistant populations. Weeds of concern, where we had the first resistance cases, and then we had problems in the province of Buenos Aires, for example, resistance of Johnson grass. We didn't know whether it was specific, non-specific, target, non-target resistance, the fitness of the populations. We learned about heritage, gene flow, how the machinery spreads those populations. We learned about the characteristics of weed killers, what different modes of actions they had, how we should change from one to another one, what led to a faster development of resistance if I use a loss which was too low or too high. We learned a lot about selection pressure. Nowadays, we all know that rotation is important. We shouldn't talk about changing the dose. The quality of replication is important. We learned about bioecology of weeds. There were many studies and papers written in the 70s and in the 80s, and for some time this work was interrupted. Unfortunately, we have gone back to them. Come on, I'm not telling people you are old, but I know you will talk about these cases. I won't say I wasn't born back then, because I would be lying that well. But fortunately, we are back to looking at these biology issues, population dynamics, competition, many issues which help us to fight weeds and resistance. Eugenia asked us to talk about the outlook, the future outlook. And although we all know what the comprehensive weed management looks like, and it looks like it's easy, well, if we have all these tools, why are we making mistakes? Why is there still resistance? We are talking about very complex systems. There's a wide diversity in the country with many diverse crops, diverse scenarios. So unfortunately, and I say fortunately because we are engineers and want to keep on working in these areas, doing research and providing advice, and this wheel moves in different ways in all the sites, and it's there where we have to play a role. And now, why do do we not always reach the proper effectiveness? Why is management more important than control sometimes, or the other way around? And we should think about many issues when we talk about weed management. There are certain issues such as the rules of the game vary from season to season. Of course, this is very important. We know that currently and for some time now there are many plots, a wide surface, many plots that have been just rented, and this is important when we try to control and manage the plots. And because of human nature, we usually go for the simplest solution. Why going for a complex solution if we have a simple one available? And we shouldn't forget about this. Being researchers or advisors, we would like to recommend some tools or approaches, but this is important. The profit is important. We understand this. And this is it. This is my contact information. I wanted to share some information with you. This is announcements I would like to make right now. I would like to talk about ASACIM, the Argentinian Association of Weed Sciences. It's a non-profit organization founded in 2012 in Tucumán, and my friends might remember this. I believe Luis is sitting there. ASACIM has a role of promoting the development and communication of weed sciences, working on different themes. We meet every 2 to 3 years at meetings or congresses. We also have a journal that is published regularly. It's a journal which includes papers, interviews to people working in this field, in the field of weeds. And we also provide trainings every year. And the most important thing is that we'd like to invite you to the 4th ASACIM Congress. The motto is Science, Production, and Society towards Sustainable Management. And we are invited to work together in order to manage weeds in order to guarantee that we'll have increased production and yield, taking into account the environment and the social requirements. Please learn about ASACIM. You can find us in the social media. You may become members of the organization. And on September 14th and 15th, we will be meeting in the 4th Argentine Weeds Congress at the Sheraton Hotel in Mar del Plata. So we invite you to attend, and thank you for giving us this opportunity of sharing this information with you. Thank you.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos nuevamente. Gracias.
Thank you, Aprasid, for the invitation. For this invitation to be on stage with some friends, some from a long time ago, some other more recent. As I had the possibility of interpreting the topic freely, I have a different approach. Marcelo will have a different approach too. Everything will integrate. I will try to show you our experience in Córdoba back in 2003. We had the big weed resistance there. After traveling to the United States, we found that Amaranthus palmeri was present there. We were scared, and now in the north of La Pampa and San Luis, that people have that type of amaranthus, but it has not moved towards our area. But amaranthus in general, the big weed, was moved. I will talk about 3 weeds. I have to talk about the hairy fleabane. Why? If it is not as relevant, but anyway, I will talk about this. We will see how dispersion has increased, the resistant biotypes have increased, and which is our proposal to manage each of these weeds. Amaranthus, as you can see in the red area, the south region in Córdoba. We started to be concerned when we saw this. It continued growing. And now in 2023, this weed is everywhere. When we started speaking about this, we mentioned pigweed. We named it pigweed, and they looked at us as if we are not from this planet, but now everyone is everywhere. The regions are affected by this weed. And when we see the percentages, the situation is even worse. We see red everywhere, and red means the pigweed presence. In Villa Valeria, we found something surprising. These Agapanthus palmeri have an incredible capacity to spread. We will then talk about the machinery, but look at these pictures taken by Julian Oliva, my partner. That was Amaranthus palmaris back in 2012. This is the third year of their research. This is 2014 and 2015. The fourth and the fifth years of their trial. This is the pigweed. When we say, please be careful, it's because we have seen that this weed in 3 years could cover the whole surface. 2014, near Machado, you can see there were some areas where the weed was present, everything was cut because all the surfaces covered, but the same year, a year later, shows again the presence of the weed. So if you have the 16 and 17, and if we had planted wheat, the situation would have been much worse. Oh, I think that some slides were lost. So my presentation will be shorter. What is the cause of the red color? The harvest. We have done all our efforts so that the presence of this weed is spread all over the region. There were 2 papers related to this, and the last 2 or 3 pages deal about how to clean the harvest machine. Who did this cleaning process? Nobody. The guide was so good that Monsanto asked for us to publish this content in Portuguese. But they do not clean the machines there either, but at least they took the guide to that country. In this plot, on the palm of Julian's hands, we saw 8 items that came back to the plot. And every time we came back to the plot, we saw the tail of the harvesting machine. And when we are cold, we saw the same. And if it was eucalyptus, we have the 90-degree curve, and so the whole plot was surrounded with this weed. How? With the machinery, we took the weed there. The drones helped us see that this pigweed was being harvested. Be ready for next year. Here we are showing the impact of the 2 plants in 2007, then in 2008, and you can see now how it looks in 2009. This is what you have seen in the fields. And we were warning you, please be careful. The first plant, please take it out, remove it by hand. And then when we said, be careful with the harvesting machine, people laughed at that, and that is what we see today. The weed is everywhere. This is the sampling, what we get from the harvesting machine, and on the trucks we see the pigweed everywhere. We do nothing, just applying herbicides. Birds eat seeds. Fortunately, they eat wheat and soybean, that's good. Corn and soybean, that's good, because if they would eat the pigweed, that could be terrible. If you see the whole area, you can see that this weed is also under the electricity wires. Wherever a pigeon or a bird goes, there's pigweed. All the machinery have these weeds because the seeds were there too, viable seeds were there. And this picture was shared with me from someone from the United States. The pigweed can be everywhere and we are not careful enough. As I said yesterday, this is a pillar we were missing today. We have a team, we have some equipment on the harvesting machine that enables us to kill this weed. How did the resistant biotypes increase? This is Amaranthus and resistant biotypes. PPO is missing there. Slightly, they started to be seen based on a paper by Tuesca here in Rosario, Amaranthus hybridus. While this was controlled by glyphosate, everything was great, but when it was no longer effective, problems started. Then the ALS inhibitors, and then the herbicides, so everything failed. We are not having a good herbicide management to control this weed. 2005, Amaranthus palmeri was controlled with the Clearfield system in sunflower. We analyzed the samples for ALS resistance. Everything was under control. Glyphosate was fully effective against Amaranthus in Villa Valeria. Then we took some samples and we evaluated some plants. But in those plants, there we found a biotype which was ALS resistant. This is official information. The tracking register, the SENASA register, 2013, there was a case reported. Then 2016, Amaranthus, which was resistant to glyphosate. Marta Imiyasu and Julian Oliva wrote a paper where they studied the genetics of this Amaranthus palmeri, and this is local, and the resistance is local. We have not imported. It has been transferred from other seeds with group 8 and group 9. We coexisted with them, and we started with agriculture and cattle raising. Problems started to appear. What happens with Amaranthus hybrid? It started in Laborde, Escalante, 2013, Center and South in Córdoba. We took some samples to see what was happening, 4, 8, and 16 liters of glyphosate, and we saw that the types in Escalante were not resistant to 16 liters, but for all the others, the weed was resistant. Different events started to develop. Cortés and Cristofoletti reported the presence of 2,4-D and dicamba resistant plants. This is a metabolic resistance. The pigweed has its way to become resistant to these applications. In the tracking registers, we can see 96 ALS, 2013 glyphosate, 2014 both ALS and glyphosate, 2017 auxins, 2017 both of them, and 2022 PPO, metabolic resistance, particularly when it is applied post-emergence. We changed the herbicide and we became experts in generating resistance because we want to take the short pass. And then we have PPO everywhere. What management do we propose? Cover crop management to delay the occurrence. They work, they move it to spring. It will delay the emergence of this weed. 1989, back in that day, this is the volume of the stubble that we had to use to have an impact on the pigweed. This is Amaranthus retroflexus, and 4,000 kilograms was the value where we could start seeing some effect. This is another paper by Cortés, and he said, if I can attain 4,000 kilograms of dry matter, I can have some effect. So we started changing the herbicide. If there's something that can help or complement the herbicide, the situation will be different. This trial, this research was in Huincarrenanco, south of Córdoba. It was a mirror trial. FMC was in charge of this trial. The crop was rye, then soybean in parallel. Look at the center part of the picture. You will see the herbicide treatment on a plot with no rye, and the service crop, and the same treatment on the rye crop. With service crop, without service crop, without, with, without, with, without, and with. Service crop is effective, no doubt. What should we use for the service crop? Wheat, triticale, rye. There were discrepancies because my colleagues from Marco Juarez wanted me to say wheat, but wheat is not effective in us. Triticale was a bit better, and rye attained a delay that was much more useful. What kind of rye? We are now trying to profile how aggressive. I think that in Cabarro, Mario Viña talked about this. We studied different types. For a population of about 1,000 plants, 50% was being treated with wheat and triticale. But there were 80 plants, and there were some other plots with 300 plants, and it could not be explained by biomass. There was something else, an allelopathy that was contributing to this negative effect. So we still need to continue studying this aerial or over the ground planting. And then we had the soybean season. We started with the service crop. It has something that needs to be standardized. The separation between rows should be shorter. If there's a high level of this wheat, we need to change the planting dates. I have the full coverage. I have a good herbicide, and I can manage the pigweed. Regarding chemical management, we have insisted on this, and we will continue insisting on this, which is the pressure on the plot. If this piece of information is missing, I'm blind. Under these conditions, all herbicides work perfectly. Second condition, there are some leaks, there are some weeds that grow, but depending on the problem, I will define the positioning of the herbicides, and the cost will be different. It is not for free. This weed is not for free. As an example, 2016, Monte Cristo, the situation is difficult. What happens if I had 600, 400, or 250 plants per square meter for sulfentrazone, high dose, 30, 45, and 60 days? Good management, 30 days, 50 50 days, 80% of population present, but I may be happy, but if this is not effective, then at 50 days I will have problems. So depending on the seed bank, my herbicide may be effective or not. Seed banks are important. Overlapping applications should be used. I need to use something to stop the germination. We can combine any herbicide in the different positioning, but I do need to use something to stop the germination of this pigweed for more than 60 days. We started with this overlapping back in 2015, different types of overlapping, low population related to the 1,000 plants per square meter. If you can see here, 120 days, control levels are almost at 7%. Doesn't matter which herbicide was used first or secondly. The thing is that I used two, and I attained a good management with a relatively low pigweed population. 2019, San Luis, this is the average of two treatments, pre-emergence and post-emergence. For pre, diflufenican in the short fallow 30 days in advance. People in San Luis were hesitant because of the rainfall. We convinced them, and all the treatment applied with a short fallow with diflufenican improved notoriously the 14 treatments that were applied later. And there were some pieces free of weed, free of control. No diflufenican pre-emergence with a mixture of flumoxacin, metribuzin, and ligate. Ligate is for grass, not for the pigweed. This is palmaris. Please check the number of plants, of the weed plants that emerged. 40 days, it was not enough. So if I use diflufenican, the same mixture, what happened? There is some emergence, but there are no new plants. If I had not used diflufenican, if I used just flumoxacin and metribuzin, what happened? There were new plants. Look at this, with diflufenican and the mixture before the planting. If I go ahead with the herbicides, then the impact will be effective with the use of the other herbicides, with soybean and wheat. Two applications. What happened? They were concerned about these frequent applications, so we started using triple mixtures. We used triple treatments. Some of the triple treatments were really interesting, but they were effective up to 60 days. When we went and checked at 85 days, those that seemed to be interesting were not effective anymore. So, triple treatment, the seed bank had to be analyzed again, and this is 1,300 plants per square meter. Therefore, the triple treatment was not effective enough. So if there are pigweed, we had to remove them by hand. We showed this, people laughed at us. There are workforces in Córdoba who are hired for this task, and the pigweed is still the winner.
Córdoba.
So what were we doing in Córdoba? I believe we took it from somewhere else. A learning curve which takes 5 years. In the north, it was just starting because we moved from the south to the north. In the south, we had fine-tuned this process 5 years after having a lot of pigweed. 5 years later, we only had soybean, no pigweed. But on year 3, everybody says, well, I didn't use a rate of herbicide which was high enough, so the Following year, they use the full rate with the same herbicide. The second year, we have been harvesting pigweed, and here we have the problem starts, and we tell, when they ask us how much we have to invest, $80 to $100, they don't do it everywhere. They just do it in the most affected plots, and you know how this story continues. Before this one, the future. It's the main weed, the weed that is driving the new modes of action of herbicides. So the pigweed corporations believe it will still exist in 10 years' time if it has a different mode of action, and there will be a business to be made here. We are creating resistance, and we'll keep on creating resistance. The map will look even blacker, and people who have the less say there is pigweed here. Well, let's move forward with this. There isn't pigweed. Will the weed be there when we get there? So we have other systems that control ryegrass. Ryegrass is already resistant to some agents. Sorry, I was cut off. Eurochlor, I was asked to talk about this because it was very popular in the center and north of Córdoba, and it was moving to the south. What struck me is that it's resistant to glyphosate. So, but we also have it in Santa Fe, but this was a weed from the northwest, and now we find in the north of Córdoba, we will find it every day, but now we have it close to Rosario, and this strikes me. I talked to the Apreci people about this and asked them, let's check, let's make sure we're talking about the same weed in 2021 or 2023. The whole of Santa Fe covered by Eurochlor. I would say it's quinochlor rather than Eurochlor, but well, let's believe this is right for the time being. How did the number of resistant biotypes increase? They are resistant to glyphosate. Glyphosate appeared early on. There isn't resistance to ALS. Thanks God for this. There isn't resistance to grass weed killers. In 2013, Marcelo La Vega, together with Raimundo and Vallejo, reported this to Apreci, the presence of this of resistance to glyphosate in Eurochlor. How should we manage it? This is very interesting. Patricia mentioned this. We have a large population per square meter of this weed with two flows of emergency. Early in the spring and in 45 days, it recruits almost 93% of all the plants that are going to grow. So we have to control this weed starting in early October until mid-November. And if I go to the plot and I use glyphosate, I don't kill it with it, plus 2,4-D, I kill all the plants, but not this weed. And with this density, there is a problem. Important number of plants growing. We have counted up to 2,000 plants per square meters in this check plot, control plot. With 2,000 plants per square meter, there's nothing you can do about this. What about weed killers? Out of all the ones available, which are very good for grasses, most of them don't control these populations above 90%. Half a liter of pivot makes a big difference. There are triplets, half a liter of pivot with other agents. Chloroacetylanides control it, but if I have 2,000 and 1,000 are left, well, nothing has changed. So this is important. And another important finding is this one. The application, overlapped applications, post-immersion, we should use the same agent again as metallochlor. in this case. And this is the check plot, soybean, diclosulam plus fluoxacin plus imesatapir. And when I move to this third possibility, only soybean is left. The wheat doesn't appear again in this plot. If we look at sulfatazone plus metallochlor together, it might be interesting if we apply that V2, if we use the three agents together. Using this after the emergence is much better than using the triplet altogether. Imesatapir makes a difference. In the rest of the cases, some plants still emerge. And in this case, I should use DIM, the last one. Conyza bonairensis. This was Conyza in 2013, and Eugenia shared with you a few minutes ago, 2015, 2017, 19, 21, and 23. It is a tough issue. It is resistant to ALS, and here I have something important. Look at the growth in resistance to ALS. Where was Conyza an issue? In Córdoba and in the wet area of the wet pampa. We use a lot of ALS to control Conyza. Horseweed. We sometimes manage it with ALS, but trying to solve an issue, we're using the same weed killer over and over again. Well, we don't solve the problem because resistance increases. If we look at the number of plots that have problems, look at ALS resistance, the increase in the number of resistant biotypes, and these are the reports. In 2015, resistance to glyphosate. In 2019, resistance to ALS. The people from Rio Cuarto University reported this, and the people from some other provinces are still working on this issue, working on resistant weeds. The Corteva group is also working on this issue. Because they have found resistant biotypes. Management approaches. Number one. Very simple. We did this many years ago with a group of people, with a team working in the north of Cordoba. The earlier they start growing, the easier it is to control the weed. The more time I have to make decisions. The later it grows, it's when the flower begins to grow. And if it starts growing in September, it grows quick again. If it starts growing in September because there has been no rainfall before this, it's much more difficult to control it. We have worked for 2 years with the same protocol for 3 different sizes of this weed, and out of the 16 treatments available, there are important differences when we group all of them and you compare them according to the size. The smaller the plant, the better the control. If the plant has become larger, the quality drops, and when it starts growing, the quality is lost completely. But the worst problem here is that out of the 14 treatments, there were 6 or so that controlled 90% of the cases. This is the average. When I moved to this part, I just had 2 treatments that controlled 65%, so I am forced to use a second agent. So size is important. The time of application is important if I don't want to spend and if I don't want to use a huge rate, because I would have a problem. I would have a resistance. Well, in closing, we are talking about process technologies, not product technologies. We are past that. So this is a railway, and I am forced to use the cars, each car, a specific car for each plot, so that I use what has to be used. Today, all the tools are available. I have to use them. We cannot say This is integrated management, but we have to use all the tools available so as to stop the development of weeds. We will have an increasing number of resistant weeds because we have been talking about this for 10 years, and there is always continuously an increasing number of resistant weeds. Thank you very much. How long did I take? 40 minutes. Don't make me feel bad, please. You have 13 minutes, Marcela. I was given a very short time span. Good afternoon. Welcome to the party. And on behalf of myself and all the colleagues, we are going to celebrate. So let's have the cake, let's have the candles. It's 10 years of our work in this network, and I will use a different approach, because if we celebrate something, we gave it a presence, an entity. What have we done throughout these 10 years? Which are the results? So controlling weeds is simple. You have an effective product, you apply it at the right time with a good quality, and the weed is controlled. So, as you can see there, in some places we control it, in some other areas it's not controlled. Just because we have this perfect triangle where we have an effective product applied on a timely basis and with a good application. So, as it's easy to control weeds. Well, this is the end of my presentation. No, I'm not going to end here because I still have some minutes left. So let's think about the effective product. The effective product starting in 1996, when we began working with transgenic varieties which were resistant to glyphosate. We thought it was these ones. Then we had problems of weeds. The REM was created. It was created before the mapping in 2018. The mapping is a twin brother of Assassin only, because Assassin was founded in 2013. I believe that Assassin also participated. Martin Marcetti, I don't know if he's here. He was working with us. He was contacting all the weed experts so that they would go to Tucumán to this meeting. Talking about an effective product, we realized when glyphosate was not giving us the results we wanted to find, we realized not everything worked for all weeds. So we needed information for decision making. And when we began to learn about the plots, we realized we were able to make other kinds of decisions. We also realized that unlike the pest or disease issues, where it's easy to count the number of pests and disease, in the case of soybean is Septoria, Cercospora, Kikuchi, Corinespora, but you can count them easily. Rust, and the same happens with in the case of pests, you may have some worms, different kinds of worms, but in the case of weeds, it's different. I just take a picture and I see 8 different kinds of weeds. So for decision making, you need maps, you have to make a diagnosis. So we wondered throughout this process how many different kinds of weeds there were in one plot, and we realized that in average there are 37 kinds of weeds in one plot. 9 are monocotyledones, and 13 were dicot. They belong to 18 different families, and there wasn't one weed killer that could control everything. So we had to find the product that was effective and how it was going to behave or perform in different environments. So the chemists started working with us. They told us about the octane or water coefficients, and I believe you told me about the Le Chatelier law to understand volatility. I'm always bothering Hugo with questions. after the diagnosis, we found what Luis said when he talked about the drivers. Which are the driver weeds, the ones that start managing and changing the system? We should focus on these weeds to find the weed that was causing the most issues. We found it was pigweed, and that it was possible to manage it in a different way, that it could be achieved. So REM began to find out how resistance was building up. And we were learning about this because we have all read management brochures where some experts shared some way of managing the scenario. And as we are celebrating our 10th anniversary, I would like to say, or to look at how this started and how we evolved. When I began to work on this, I thought everything was chemistry. Let's do some tests and let's find the most effective herbicides. But some researchers were working on population dynamics, germination power, and I said, why? What for? In the fields, the weeds keep on growing. So that's why I have this slide here. Well, when I was young, I'm old, I have to say this. When I was young, I thought that everything was applied research until I realized how important it was to learn about basic research, and that we need to create bridges that would help us to manage. And in this basic research, which was done through the REM network, we saw how weeds would grow. In the case of Eleusine, how it moved from 5 to 9 hectares between 2017 and 2019, and this is an 80% growth. What were we doing? Because this diagnosis also enabled us to assess the best management tools or tactics, the ones we were using. So Eleusine moved from 5 million to 9 and 80% growth in 2 years, and today we can see that it's present in 12 million hectares. The growth has been of over 100% in only 6 years. When the technicians, the ones who have to manage the problem, why is the surface area growing? Well, because the weed is a little bit older than myself, millions of years of evolution. So we began to think about research, about applied research, and we would say Johnson grass, and this was done by Fabio Gerse in Buenos Aires, working with people from Buenos Aires University and Emilio Sartori. They were young back then. The thermal stages, the behaviors of the weeds in the various ecosystems, because we don't have just one ecosystem in the country. The soya bean in the southern hemisphere is different from the one in the northern hemisphere. All the soya bean crops in the southern hemisphere is grown in latitudes above 37 degrees. So weather plays a key role, and it has an impact. In the north, 15 reproductive cycles in one rhizoma of Johnson grass. So from the moment it starts growing until it grows again in north, until it dies because of some frost, it will have 15 reproduction cycles, so many seeds. Whereas in the south, it only has 3 reproduction cycles because the temperature is much lower. So look at the map and remember this 15 3-cycle story, and look at the weed. This is proof, or no, this is proof or evidence of what the maps would tell us 30 or 40 years ago. And that's why these weeds were growing in the north. It's not because we were doing things the wrong way, it was just that the environment is different. So there are many more cycles, and when people talked about the pest, the more cycles, the more selection pressure, so the higher the likelihood of having resistance. And what happened with Johnson grass? It kept on growing, so we said let's use a different herbicide, 2 or 3 applications of a different herbicide without thinking of other tools. And there we had what we have on the right, the resistance to some agents, resistance to graminicides. Basic research was also telling other things, that this is the dynamic of Johnson grass. When should we control it? The dotted line, this is the leaves. The full line is the dynamic of the rhizome. So where we have the arrow, this frost, the aerial part was killed, but the rhizome got to its best point, but it's a live organism, so the reserves increase. When the temperature was up after the winter, the plant begins to grow, and once it grows, well, it will take energy from the sun to make the rhizome grow again. So this is the process. So here we find the best time, one of the parts of the triangle, when we should control. We would say, well, let's apply the product in March before the frost. That's useless because the plants think. How do the plants think? They think the same way we think. We are going to feed the rhizome. This is the first thing we feed once we have a big belly, we have a family and kids, but when we see just one piece of pie on the plate, we don't eat it, we leave it for our kids. Plants think the same way. They have flowers, seeds, so they say, I'm not going to eat this piece of pie, I don't send to rhizome, I will send it upwards. We have to feed the kids so that they keep on spreading. What we need systemic products that move to the rhizome, not to the leaves. That's the relationship between source and destination. This is what. So which is the best time when we have the small rhizome, 30 centimeters of plant, all the photosynthesis elements are moving, so the product will move together with the products and carbon hydrates, it will move to the rhizome and we'll be able to control it. This is what we learn in physiology. So here we had Johnson grass treated this way and we were successful, but what happened? We had some failures, however, and we began to use other products, a different one and a different one, always the same tool. So we have the graminicides, so we have to go back to the basics to learn. Go back to the books. We didn't have new manuals back then. And we had azulan, for example, which we used to control Johnson grass and sugarcane. So we combined it with graminicide and we achieved this control 60 days after application, and it's growing again. We have killed the rhizome.
And then the combination with carryover herbicides. That's a perennial plant. The annual plant is different because plants are beings, are advanced beings. Weeds are very advanced weeds which dominated time and space. We saw how weeds use us to move. They were the masters of the time, of the space, because they go to sleep and they're going to wake up very young in 2, 6, or even 50 years from now. When the weed wakes up, its temperature will have a maximum and a minimum values, and we do not study the temperature just as we do with the ecophysiology of wheat. Wheat needs 58 degrees for germination, so we start adding, and then in September we know it takes longer, but then December it grows faster because of the temperature. And the same is seen with weeds. When it goes through the minimum, it goes past the minimum temperature, germination starts. So when do weeds germinate? And all the dynamics are present. And we need to go back to dynamic studies and we see how the weeds grow. This is an eocene. It has 5 emergence flows. 5 cohorts were used for the trial. When there is enough temperature, enough direct sun radiation, enough thermal range, and water enough, the dormant weed will wake up. If those conditions are not met, it goes to sleep again because she knows there's danger and comes back on the following year. If there's a dynamics from a biological study that can be associated to a crop, we could get a combination of a biological adversary with a crop. That is what we as agricultural engineers need to get. We need to pair those two. We are the managers of natural environments. As Enrique Lobo says, the manager is the person who does something so that things happen. And you are managers of natural environments. We will introduce the crop based on that dynamic, depending on the weeds or the soybean. I have 3 cohorts. When I have one, I do an application. I have 3 fallows. Then I wait a bit for the first one, but then for the second one, it has grown above the ground, and then the product is not as effective. So if I get the plot under that condition and I get the information of the usine presence in the plot, I need to think that the plant will emerge, and I will be able to tell when that would happen. And if I let it be born, if I let it emerge, I will have a problem. And that's the same plot where there was nothing done, just waiting for the weeds, and that's eocene, a glyphosate-resistant eocene. And if on that population with a high genetic variety I exercise pressure, I will initiate resistance against new mechanisms of actions. And I have wheat there, a vulnerable crop to early competence. But what about if I use a carryover herbicide on that time and then a different one when I plant a residual or carryover herbicide for the first period and then during the emergence of the corn? What Luis has said, that's the overlapping of herbicides. And that is what we are going to get. This picture, when I said, let's act now, the plot we saw, the plot we diagnosed with eocene, I used 2 residual or carryover herbicides, and I attain a clean field. That's the overlapping application. Effective product, right time, good quality of application. I could be talking about this for 2 days, but I just wanted to present these 3 pillars. Information is key. Why? Because the way we elaborate information within our brain leads to knowledge. The knowledge to make things work. I talked about the right timing. Having a diagnosis enables us to be there on the right time. What is opportunity? Opportunity refers to the convenience of the combination of a context and a space. It means that it's not a matter of being lucky. We need to do something. Opportunity is the time when those who can take advantage of it are the ones who are going to succeed. I have already said thank you, so I'm not going to repeat. This is a party. Happy birthday. Okay, I just need to say thank you.
No es necesario estar en el campo para sembrar. En Syngenta creemos que en el campo o en la ciudad sembramos, porque cultivando esfuerzo, solidaridad y diversidad podemos cosechar progreso, empatía, innovación y un futuro mejor. Todos los días podemos sembrar algo nuevo. Syngenta.